Part 2. Chapter 9. No Rest. The cab ride back to the Imperial guest house passed quietly. Naomi sat with her eyes closed, rubbing the side of her head. Jax watched the city pass by outside the window. The storm was definitely winding down. Here and there he could see stars. The cabbie, thankfully, remained silent for the drive. Jax couldn't tell if the storm had finally blown itself out, or if the eye had moved over Titan City. The cab pulled to a stop in front of the Imperial guest house, the passenger doors sliding open. Jax paid the fare and followed Naomi into the lobby. By that point, she seemed to be feeling better. Jax pressed the button to summon the elevator. "You look like you're doing better." Naomi nodded. "I am. I think the nanites finally got a handle on things." The elevator doors opened, and she stepped in, followed by Jax. "I still have to figure out how to get rid of the data, but at least I don't feel like my insides are on fire." Jax swore. "We should have stopped and bought a new data storage module." The elevator arrived at their floor. Naomi shrugged. "We can grab one tomorrow. I'll take something for the headache, but I think I'm good, for now at least." They reached the door to their suite as the door to Governor Singh and Jeffries slid open. "Hello, you two," the diminutive Indian woman said. She eyed them both up and down. "You look like shit." Jax grimaced. "Thanks, Auntie." He held the door open so Naomi could enter. When he spied his adopted aunt still standing there, he asked, "Something else?" She clucked. "You forgot. The closing reception for the summit." She consulted her G-phone. "It's tonight, in 30 minutes to be specific." Jax rubbed his face. "Would it be—" he started. Governor Singh cut him off. "I will ring the buzzer in 30 minutes so we can arrive fashionably late." She held up a finger. "But not too late." She didn't wait for his reply, stepping back into her suite, letting the door slide closed. How did she even know we were out here? Jax wondered aloud as he entered the suite, letting the door slide closed behind him. Inside the suite, the door to Naomi's room was closed. Jax looked around, muttering, "Beer or shower?" He tapped his chin as he thought, then moved to the kitchenette space, grabbing a beer from the refrigerator. Shower beer. He headed for his room. 30 minutes later, almost to the second, the announcement chime rang. A display set next to the door came to life. On it, Governor Singh and Jeffrey were waiting outside, both dressed in their finest. Jax opened the door. "That's a lovely sari, Auntie." Naomi appeared behind him. "It really is." The old woman made a face. "Don't try to sweet-talk me." She hitched a thumb toward the lifts. "Let's go." Jax and Naomi were in the nicest clothes they had brought to New Terra. The reception was being held at the palace, which meant a cab ride. Despite the name, the Imperial guest house was not that close to the Imperial palace, or even on the palace grounds. By the time their cab arrived, they were appropriately late. "Mind your manners while we're here. These people are my peers and my friends," the governor scolded as she stepped out of the cab. She looked at Jax. "Also, if you act up, the Imperials will kill you." Jax inclined his head, holding his hands up, palms out. The Imperial Palace wasn't a repurposed governmental building. When the war ended, the newly crowned emperor raised the Independent Systems Alliance Grand Council Chamber. He called it a symbol of dysfunction. In order for humanity to claim its place in the galaxy, a building that reflected the shared strength of purpose was needed. That the project created jobs for several years helped wipe away most objections. Made to resemble castles of old, the palace had several towers that reached dozens of stories into the sky. The main tower dwarfed them all, reaching into the clouds. If you ignored what it stood for, and who lived in it, it was a beautiful building. As the group approached the main doors, 2 immaculately dressed Imperial guards opened the massive doors to the palace. Jax put on his best innocent expression. "Would I," he looked at Naomi, "we embarrass you?" The look the elderly woman gave him would burn through titanium. The palace's grand foyer was 50 meters wide and easily 200 long. The emperor had lined it with banners and artifacts from around the empire. Between the banners, on marble pedestals, sat models of starships, fighters, and power armor used during the war. Spaced along the walls between trinkets were doors leading off to meeting rooms, supply rooms, and who knew what else. At the far end of the foyer, off to the left, was the door that led to the hallway, that led to the elevator, that led to the throne room. It was the only way up to that ultra-secure space. Jax had heard that the views from the throne room on a clear day were magnificent. A voice over the loudspeaker said, "Governor Niti Singh, Kelso Station and entourage." "Yes, yes, you most certainly would." Governor Singh looked at Naomi. "Not you, dear. Just him. He's trouble." She looked at Geoffrey. "Why don't you and Naomi mingle? I'd like Jackson to meet a few of the others." "Entourage?" Jax looked around, frowning. Geoffrey offered his arm to Naomi. "Shall we?" She took his arm. The governor looked at Jax. "Come, Jackson." He groaned. Party time. "Barbara, Stephen," Governor Singh said as she approached a pair of well-dressed older people. The woman, around Governor Singh's age, with white hair and a long black skirt, turned. "Niti," she looked at Jax. "This must be your nephew." Jax reached out, taking her offered hand. "I'm Barbara Rosales, Governor of Durango Station." "Nice to meet you, ma'am," Jax replied. The woman looked at Niti. "He's cute." She turned to Jax and winked. "Oh, Barbara, stop messing with the boy," the man she was with, Stephen, said. The dark skin crinkled around his eyes as he grinned, his hairless pate shining in the flickering mock candlelight of the room. "Jackson, pleased to meet you. Stephen Tesfaye, Conso Station." He offered his hand. Jax shook the offered hand. "I've been to Conso a few times. Great station. Amazing food." Jax grinned. "Oh, and that club in the Industrial?" He trailed off when he saw the look of interest on Governor Tesfaye's face. "Never mind." Barbara chuckled and leaned in, which forced everyone else to follow suit. "Did you hear?" Governor Tesfaye shook his head. "Hear what?" Governor Singh nodded. "What?" "Someone attacked the Imperial Science Academy building, blew it up," Rosales whispered. "Not all of it," Jax mumbled under his breath. "What?" Singh said. "What do you mean? How is that even possible?" She straightened, looking around. "Why isn't the city in lockdown?" Governor Tesfaye nodded. "Yeah, that seems like something they'd lock everything down for." Rosales continued. "I heard from a contact in the palace's administrative pool that there are rumblings of a rebel faction based right here on New Terra." "No way," Tesfaye said. He ran a hand over his bald head as his eyes darted around the space. Governor Singh looked at Jax, who had been standing off to the side of the trio of governors. "Jackson, have you heard anything about this?" "Who? Me?" He put a hand on his chest. "Why would I have heard anything about it?" His adopted aunt's brow crinkled as she studied him. "You were out somewhere before we came here," she replied, her eyes boring a hole into his soul. "Oh, yeah, right." Jax's cheeks flushed. "Yeah, no, we didn't hear anything about it. We definitely weren't anywhere near the Science Academy." Governor Singh's eyes narrowed as she scrutinized him. A server came by with a tray of stuffed mushroom caps, forcing the trio of conspiratorial governors to change topics. At the bar halfway along the length of the grand foyer, Naomi and Geoffrey were clinking wine glasses. "Cheers," the young man said. Naomi smiled. "So, how was the summit?" She took a sip, enjoying what must have been a several hundred-credit glass of wine. "Oh, this is good," she purred. Geoffrey ran a hand through his light brown hair, exhaling. Mind-numbing. Naomi took a sip of her drink, her headache finally subsiding. What goes on? I'd kind of expect it to take longer than a few days. Geoffrey took his own sip. A lot of posturing from the Imperials, mostly. The governors break out into working groups, going over supply chains and cargo routes. He took another sip. They formed some working groups to discuss trade and other things. Nothing will come of them. He sighed. That sounds horrible, Naomi admitted. Geoffrey smiled. The whole almost dying on our way here thing really should have had a better payoff than 2 days of meetings and Imperial posturing. Naomi raised her glass in agreement. Jackson, this is Marcus Johansson. He's the governor of Humboldt Colony. Jackson, the man, shook hands. Nice to meet you, the former said, inclining his head. Before the heavy-set man could return the pleasantry, the overhead speaker announced, Ladies and gentlemen, Emperor Justin Abernathy Stenson of the Grand Human Empire. Conversations around the large space immediately wrapped up as everyone turned toward the large doors at the end of the foyer as they swung open. Imperial guards in their finery marched out. While dressed in what Jax considered puffery, each guard was an expert in many types of hand-to-hand fighting skills, and under their frilly coats were likely many guns, and probably knives. Almost certainly knives. The Emperor came out after his guard had fanned out. Greetings, everyone, he boomed, his voice carried by the overhead speakers. He took the 5 steps up to the small stage. There was no lectern, just a flat surface that raised him above all others. Thank you all for joining me on this last night of our time together. It's been a wonderful 2 days. I wish we had more time together. I'm sure you all will return to your stations and colonies, energized to work hard and make our empire ever stronger. The Emperor continued. Our empire is as strong as she's ever been. Together, we'll continue to show the human-settled galaxy that our strength is in our unity. Humanity is destined for greatness, and we'll get there together as one. Imperial colonies and stations, hand in hand with our fringe brothers and sisters. Governor Singh made a noise, causing Jax to look down at her. She waved him off. The Emperor continued talking, his gaze roving across the faces of those gathered, making sure everyone was paying attention. Geoffrey and Naomi were still standing near the bar. They had been talking to the governor of Anchor Colony when the Emperor took the stage. As the trio turned to watch him give his address, Naomi found her wineglass more and more interesting. Unable to look upon the man who had issued the order for her and many other children's deaths, Naomi slowly became aware that the room had gotten a little quieter. She looked up to find the Emperor staring right at her. He caught himself, continuing what he had been saying, but his eyes stayed on Naomi for a bit longer. When the ruler of most of human-controlled space moved his attention elsewhere, Geoffrey leaned over. What was that? Naomi shrugged. No idea. She shuddered and put both hands on her wineglass to keep it from sloshing. No idea. Do you know the Emperor? His gaze certainly gave the impression he knows you. Naomi noticed that several other attendees of the reception were looking at her, some openly, others out of the corner of their eye trying to be discreet. I don't feel well. I'm going to head back to the guest house. Geoffrey stared for a moment, then got his wits about him. I'll go with you. This part took a turn. You're not looking so hot, Geoffrey said as he and Naomi walked out of the palace, into the night. A line of cabs was waiting for the other reception attendees. The night was clear, stars dotting the sky. The storm had finally, fully blown itself out. Naomi shook her head. I'm not feeling so hot. I think I'll go to the ship and see the auto dock. Couldn't you visit a med center here? I'm sure there are several public wellness centers downtown. They'd be a hell of a lot closer." He pointed off toward the glittering skyscrapers in the distance. The palace sat at the edge of downtown, putting the towers, monorail stations, and government buildings between it and the spaceport. "I could, but I trust our auto-dock more, and it's not tied to the Imperial medical database." Jeffrey stared for a long minute. "Okay." He leaned forward, tapping the seat. "Change of plans. Can you take us to the spaceport?" He turned to Naomi, then back to the driver. "Alpha." "Sure thing," the driver replied, adjusting her course. The cab made a turn and angled away from the Imperial guest house and towards Spaceport Alpha. 20 minutes later, Jeffrey and Naomi were walking between two medium freighters towards the waiting Osprey. Naomi reached into her pocket and handed Jeffrey her G-phone after tapping on the screen. He took the device, looking at it, then put it to his ear. Hello?" "Hello, Jeffrey," the voice of the ship's SI said. "Oh, Skip. Hi. Naomi and I are coming back. We're almost to you." "Is everything okay? Is the captain with you?" Rudy cut in. "No, he's not with us. I think he's okay, but Naomi isn't. She doesn't look good," Jeffrey said, as Naomi put more of her weight on him. He grunted. "She's pretty messed up. I don't know what's wrong. She's also heavy." "I'll meet you at the ramp. Hurry up." That time it was Baxter. The duracrete of the spaceport was still wet, puddles scattered here and there. The Osprey's boarding ramp lowered, unfolding as it did. It hit the wet ground with a thud. A matte black droid crept down the ramp. "I'm not detecting anyone in the vicinity except Jeffrey and Naomi," Skip beamed to Baxter. "I think you can go get them." Baxter turned in the direction the two were coming from and dashed off. "On my way." A few minutes later, Baxter was easing Naomi onto the bio-bed in the Osprey's small med bay. He turned his swishing optic sensor to Jeffrey. "What happened?" The young gubernatorial assistant shrugged. "No idea. We were at the Emperor's closing reception thing, and she just started looking bad." He stepped back from the bed as the auto-dock lowered from the ceiling. "She insisted we come here instead of a med center downtown." The auto-dock, a shiny white oval on an articulated arm, possessed a specialized rudimentary intelligence packed with medical procedures, drug facts and interactions, and basic surgical skills. While the main processor of the auto-dock was the foot-long oval, the entire med bay was its body. Segmented arms mounted to the wall nearest the biobed deployed, some with scanners, some with medical implements. Baxter and Jeffrey scurried out of the way as the shiny white ovoid got to work. "Governor Singh," the Emperor said as he reached the governor and Jax. Two imposing Imperial Guard troopers were keeping a respectful distance behind him. "Emperor?" She inclined her head respectfully. Jax looked around, then followed suit, his eyes never leaving the two guards. "Emperor Stenson, this is my nephew, Jackson." She chewed on the rest. "Caruso." The Emperor's eyebrows crept up his face. "Caruso?" Jackson blushed. The Emperor smiled. "The past is the past. It's a pleasure to meet you, young man." He extended his hand. It was easy for the Emperor to be so blasé about the past. He was the Emperor. Jackson's parents were both dead, along with thousands of other Indies. Jax looked at the offered hand, his mouth a compressed line. Governor Singh elbowed him in the hip. "You shake it," she hissed. Jax shook his head and shook the Emperor's hand. "Your parents were good people, misguided in their views on how humanity should progress in the galaxy, but good people," the Emperor said. Thank you," Jack stammered. The Emperor turned to the governor. "Governor Singh, during my speech, I spied a young woman standing next to your assistant. She looked incredibly familiar. Who is she?" Regal privilege replaced his previous friendliness. Governor Singh opened her mouth, but Jax cut her off. "No idea, sir. She didn't come with us." The Emperor turned his attention back to Jax. The Emperor looked from Jax to the governor. "Where did your assistant go?" Governor Singh looked around. I don't know." She turned to Jax. "Did you see Geoffrey leave?" Jax shook his head. "No, he must have gotten tired, turned in early." He glanced at the Emperor, still addressing his adopted aunt. "You know how much he hates space travel. Maybe he wanted one more good night's sleep before our trip home." The small Indian woman shrugged, then looked at the Emperor. "He's a baby about space travel." The Emperor frowned. "Interesting." He looked around. "Excuse me." He turned and walked towards the bar Geoffrey and Naomi had camped out at, his guards falling in line. One of them watched Jax out of the corner of his eye as he passed. Jax pulled his phone out of his pocket. He tapped the screen a few times. Weird. They're at the spaceport, aboard the Osprey. He looked at his aunt to see that she wasn't listening to anything he had just said. Governor Singh had her own phone out. "Geoffrey, where are you?" Jax could not hear the reply. "Why are you there?" She turned to look at Jax, who showed her his G-phone screen, with the locator dot for Naomi aboard the Osprey. "What's wrong with her?" Jax frowned. "What do you mean, you don't know?" Jax tapped her shoulder. "We should go." The diminutive Indian woman said, "We'll be there shortly." She did not wait for Geoffrey to reply. She tapped the screen and deposited the phone in her handbag. "Let's go." Awkward cab rides. As the cab pulled away from the palace, the governor leaned closer to her nephew. "What did you do?" "What do you mean?" he asked. She shifted in the seat, her sari rustling. "Don't you, what do you mean me? First, I hear that there is an attack on the Imperial Science Academy building. Then there was that bit with the Emperor. Why did he think he knew Naomi?" She reached over and pinched Jax's midsection. "You better not be mixed up in whatever happened downtown." Jax flinched. "Ouch! Why did you—" He looked at the cab driver, who was doing her best to ignore the domestic squabble taking place in the back seat. "Not here," he hissed. He asked the cabbie, "What's going on downtown? We heard there was an explosion." The governor harumphed but did not press the conversation. Her expression made it clear to Jax that he was enjoying only a temporary reprieve. The cabbie looked in the mirror at her passengers. "No idea. They're saying a power cell exploded or something. It was one of the tall government buildings." Jax looked at Governor Singh, his face saying, "See, it wasn't me." Her face replied, "I do not for 1 second believe you." He pulled his G-phone out of a pocket and started tapping the screen. The local newsnet seemed more preoccupied with the Emperor's summit wrapping up, and some press releases that indicated the station and colony governors had once again committed themselves to the peace and prosperity of the Empire. He had to scroll a bit to find mention of the Academy of Sciences explosion, barely 2 paragraphs. An experimental power cell, one that would eventually revolutionize power generation, exploded. There were no fatalities and only minor injuries because of the storm and time of the explosion, well after most employees left for the day. The Imperial guest house at that hour was a ghost town. There was only one bored-looking bellhop leaning against a pillar when the cab pulled up to a stop. The young man opened the cab door for Governor Singh. "Welcome back, ma'am." She nodded to the man and said, "We'll be checking out. Please send a cart to Suite 809 and 806. She headed into the lobby. Jax paid the cab driver, and as the vehicle departed, said, "We'll need a ride to Spaceport Alpha in about 30 minutes. The bellhop nodded. Time to go. An anxious half-hour later, Jax and Governor Singh were back in a cab on the way to the spaceport. "They had better not damage anything," Governor Singh groused. Their luggage, hers mostly, was in another vehicle, as the cab they were in had insufficient cargo space. Jax turned from looking out the window. "I'm sure it'll be fine." It was nearing midnight. Outside the window was mostly pitch black, except for the towers of downtown. Noticeably absent was the Academy of Sciences building. It was completely dark. He had hoped that the commander would stay true to his word, but it hadn't surprised him when the devices went off before he and Naomi had even left the building. Even more stars were visible above. The clouds seemed to have exhausted themselves, finally, and the storm was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, Jax's thoughts wandered to Old Town and its residents. He hoped the people he had met and worked with were okay. At that time of night, the spaceport was largely deserted, with only a minimal night watch on duty at the main entrance. As the cab pulled away, a woman in a spaceport control uniform came out. "Can I help you folks?" Governor Singh nodded, hitching a thumb to the cab full of luggage, pulling in as their cab departed. "You can get us someone to help with all this." The woman's mouth fell open as the cab driver got out, opening all the vehicle's doors to reveal the suitcases piled inside. "Oh my, you've no idea," Jax said. He added, "We're parked at D9. He moved through the entry to make his way through the security checkpoint, Governor Singh following. The spaceport woman watched as the cab driver kept piling suitcases up. Sighing, she waved to one of her colleagues. One upside of returning to the spaceport in the middle of the night was that the security line was non-existent. Jax and Governor Singh were through in a matter of minutes. The governor scolded several employees to be careful with her luggage and hurry and get it to the ship. Jax had tried to calm her down, but after a series of open-handed slaps to his shoulder, he realized she was tired, and he was okay with the spaceport employees being the focus of her attention. They caught a small ground car from the spaceport entrance to the pad D9. Jeffrey was waiting for them at the foot of the Osprey's boarding ramp. He was nervously shuffling from one foot to another. When Governor Singh approached, the young man rushed over. "Sorry for leaving so suddenly, ma'am." She waved him away, moving up the ramp. "Water under the bridge." She looked over her shoulder. "See to our luggage." Jeffrey looked at Jax, who just pointed to the approaching cargo vehicle. "Good luck." He followed his adopted aunt into the ship. Once on the cargo deck, Jax moved quickly to the small medical bay just forward of the engineering space. Naomi occupied the sole bed. The auto dock had tucked itself up near the ceiling. It had done everything it could. "You look like shit," Jax quipped. Naomi opened an eye. "You suck." She closed her eye, then opened them both. "I don't know what's going on, but it ain't good." A hand trailing an IV line moved to her torso. "There's too much in here." Jax looked at her. "I knew it was your spleen." He grinned. She made a rude gesture. Naomi nodded toward the dormant auto dock. "It couldn't really make heads or tails of what's going on inside me, other than to point out that the data storage modules that are tucked into my nooks and crannies seem to be failing or overloading." She closed her eyes. "Or something." She grinned. "It did give me some outstanding drugs, though." Jax looked at the ceiling for a moment. "What do we do?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Can you upload it all into Skip?" Naomi shook her head. "It's stuck. I don't know why. I don't know if it's corrupted or just too much." Her eyes closed, and Jax thought she was unconscious until she said, "Columbiana," in a whisper that trailed off. Jax's heart nearly leapt from his chest until he glanced at the biomonitor. That time, she was asleep. When Jax came up the stairs onto the common deck, Rudy was waiting. "I hate this place. I can't even begin to explain how boring it is being cooped up on this thing." The squat droid's head made a full rotation as he rolled up to Jax. "This thing has a name," Skip said sourly. Rudy waved both of his thin arms. "You know what I mean." There was a pause. "I take it things went sideways." Jax ignored them. "Auntie and Jeffrey turn in?" There was a crash from below. Rudy said, "That would be Jeffrey struggling with the luggage still. The governor is in her quarters." "My quarters," Jax mumbled, then said, "Hey, Baxter, can you help Jeffrey? I'd like to get off this rock." "On it." Jax headed for the flight deck. Skip, let's get ready to go. Copy that, the ship's SI replied. Before Jax reached the flight deck, the low rumble of the reactor spinning up vibrated through the deck plating. Dropping into his command seat, with Rudy clipping into his station, Jax toggled the comm system. Titan City Space Control, this is the Osprey, requesting departure clearance. There was a static-filled moment. Osprey, departure in the middle of the night is uncommon. But allowed? Jax pressed. Another pause, the hiss of the open channel filling the flight deck. That is correct, Osprey. One moment. Jax looked over his shoulder. Plot us a course to Columbiana Station. The droid made a noise. Columbiana? You're not taking the governor home? Jax nodded. I mean, eventually, yes. Naomi needs something or someone on Columbiana. Hopefully, she'll tell us who or what once we're on the way. He turned back to face the wide, clear forward view screen. Auntie is just gonna have to tag along. He heard Rudy whisper something about not cleaning up the blood.